Somewhere right now, a man is lying awake convinced he's failing in bed because of a number he saw online. A number that is, statistically, completely wrong. Today, I'm going to show you the real data, collected and timed from 500 couples across the world, on exactly how long intercourse actually lasts on average. Not what people guess, not what movies show you, what was measured second by second with an actual stopwatch. And I promise you, the real number is going to surprise almost everyone watching this, whether you're the one worried about lasting too short a time, or your partner's secretly wondering the same thing about you. I'm Dr. Onabanjo, a urologist who spends a lot of time helping people separate sexual myth from sexual fact, and this is one of the most misunderstood numbers in the entire conversation around intimacy. So if you've ever quietly wondered whether you measure up, stay with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly where you stand, and it's probably not where you think. Before we get into the data, we need to be clear about what's actually being measured, because this matters more than people realize. In the research I'm pulling from, sex is defined strictly as penetration, meaning the clock starts at the moment of initial penetration and stops at the end. Foreplay isn't included in this number at all. That doesn't mean foreplay isn't important. In fact, it's arguably more important for satisfaction than penetration time itself. But for the purpose of this specific data, we're talking purely about that window. The study also focuses specifically on heterosexual couples, so keep that context in mind. But regardless of what any study says, the single most important thing in any sexual relationship is communication. Numbers and averages can give you context, but they can never tell you what your specific partner wants, enjoys, or expects. And the only way to actually know that is to talk about it. Openly, without shame, both during intimacy and outside of it. Every person and every relationship is different, and a fulfilling sex life is built on that ongoing conversation, not on hitting some external benchmark. Now let's talk about perception first, because this is where most of the anxiety actually comes from. When men were asked what they believed the ideal length of penetrative intercourse should be, medically referred to as intravaginal ejaculatory latency time, the average answer was around 16 minutes. When asked how long they thought people actually last in reality, the estimate dropped to about 9 minutes. So, already, before we even look at real data, most men are walking around believing the bar is somewhere between 9 and 16 minutes and quietly measuring themselves against that number. Here's the problem. That number isn't real. It's a perception shaped by pornography, locker room exaggeration, and a culture that rarely talks about this honestly. And perception, when it's wrong, is exactly what creates unnecessary shame. So here's what the actual data shows. Researchers took 500 couples from multiple countries around the world and had them time their intercourse using a stopwatch, measuring strictly from the start of penetration to ejaculation. The average length they found was 5.7 minutes, not 16, not 9, 5.7 minutes. Let that sink in for a moment, because if you've been quietly comparing yourself to 9 or 16 minutes this entire time, you have been measuring yourself against a fantasy, not a fact. Now, there was a range within this data, anywhere from as short as about 6 seconds to as long as 55 minutes, so there is real variation from person to person and couple to couple. Interestingly, the average also varied by country. Turkey recorded the shortest average at 4.4 minutes, while the United Kingdom recorded the longest average at around 10 minutes. So even across cultures, there's meaningful variation, which tells you something important. There is no single universal target you're supposed to be hitting. Now let's flip to the other side of this conversation, because it's incomplete if we only talk about men's expectations. What do women actually want? There isn't a large, rigorous clinical study answering this with the same precision, but one informal poll of around 4,000 women found that the average desired length of penetrative intercourse was about 25 minutes. Now, I want to be careful here, because unlike the stopwatch study, this is self-reported preference data from a poll, not a controlled clinical measurement, so I wouldn't treat this number as gospel either. What it does tell us is that desire and actual average duration are two very different things. And that gap is completely normal. It's also a strong reminder that duration alone isn't the full picture of what makes sex satisfying for a partner. Emotional connection, foreplay, communication, and attentiveness typically matter far more than the clock. So here's what I actually want you to take from all of this. If you're around that 5 to 6 minute average, you are not underperforming. You are statistically right in line with most couples on the planet. If you're shorter or longer than that, you're still well within a completely normal range because human variation here is enormous. What actually matters is not whether you hit some imaginary 16-minute mark you saw quoted online. It's whether you and your partner are both genuinely satisfied with your intimacy and whether you're communicating honestly enough to know that. That said, if you're personally experiencing premature ejaculation or, on the other end, delayed ejaculation that's affecting your relationship or your confidence, that's not something you need to just live with quietly. Book an appointment with a urologist because there are real effective treatments available. I also have a dedicated video breaking down premature ejaculation in more depth, including practical strategies that actually help, so go check that out after this. And beyond medical care, working with a certified sex therapist can also make a meaningful difference, especially when the issue is as much psychological or relational as it is physical. So I've included some trusted resources in the description where you can find one near you. At the end of the day, this video isn't about giving you a new number to be anxious about. It's about taking away a number that was never true in the first place. You are very likely far more normal than you've been led to believe. Thanks so much for watching, and remember, take care of yourself, because you're worth it.